Greetings, Earthlings. Welcome to Celestial Compass. I'm Kathy Beal of EmpowermentUnlimited.net, and we are officially in spooky season. And the astrology really fits that this year because we have a number of planets making really harsh, important contacts to Pluto, ruler of Scorpio, lord of the dead, lord of the veil, as they all cross over. So the sun and then Mercury are going to move into Scorpio just in time for the Scorpio new moon at the beginning of November. And before then, two other things are happening that will play into this particular Halloween season. One of them is Venus, which represents our social mode, is in Sagittarius, which is all about parties. So you may be wanting to run around in costume. This could be the kind of atmosphere that encourages people to dress up at work. That makes me think of a friend of mine, a Gemini, who would put vampire teeth on and handcuff his briefcase to him. And when he would go into the bank just to kind of freak people out, we could be playing quite a bit like that. A lot of people wanting to be outdoors, lots of market, lots of witchy things going on. And then on Halloween itself, there is a beautiful unbroken link between Mercury, planet of communication, and Neptune, the connection to the divine. Your intuition could be off the charts. You could be hearing messages in music. It could be incredibly easy to communicate with, well, to escape. So we could really all be into sugar loading and toasting the other world as we cross over into November. And then the All Saints and All Souls Day, the Day of the Dead, could be a very real and palpable experience for all of us, whether those are events that you normally pay attention to. So bottom line is spooky season, very spooky season. We're feeling it. And in honor of that, I like to always have something ghosty and Halloweeny in my second October show. And this time we have ghost stories by an author who specializes in them. So I'd like to welcome Kelly Lidji, who is a Delaware author. I met when I was on a book event in Rehoboth Beach in May, and she is the author of the Haunting Clarity book series. So welcome, Kelly.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I want to talk a little bit, start with, why do you think, what's the appeal of ghost stories?
I think for me, the appeal of ghost stories is the assumption that we do go on in some way or another. And while no one knows for sure, just thinking that you could run into a beloved family member anywhere at some point kind of just makes me happy, you know. Now, as for scary ghosts, not every ghost crosses over in a pleasant way. So sometimes people have issues, but I I like to be scared. I
Ah,
Yeah, I am a product of my mother. I was taken to see Jaws when I was 3 years old in the theater. I was taken to see The Omen when I was 4. So I grew up with spooky stuff, and I just love it. Yeah.
have you ever seen a ghost?
Yeah. The funny thing is I didn't see anything supernatural in my entire life until I gave birth to my son. And my son can see a lot more than I do. When he was very small, probably less than 2 years old, we went into a metaphysical store, and we were in there for maybe 2 minutes. And the woman, the lovely lady behind the counter, looked at me and she says, has anybody ever told you about him? And I'm like, what do you mean? And she says, does he ever know stuff that he shouldn't know or sees things that aren't there? And I was like, Yeah, yeah. She's like, I see it all over him, just like all over him. It's not as strong as it used to be. He's 22 now, but I still trust what he tells me. I trust his intuitions. I trust his feelings. And since that, the very first time that he did it, um, I guess he was about 18 months old and pretty advanced vocabulary wise. He was an early talker, just like I was. And we were at a friend of my mother's house. We were watching her house while she was in Italy. And she had this lovely front room that was 2-story, and there was a staircase that led up to the loft. And we're sitting on the couch, and he looks at me and he says, Mommy, who's that man? And I said, What man? The man on the stairs, the man with no hair. And I was like, buddy, I don't see a man, but he was convinced that he was there. And I was like, okay. And we went on about our day. And the next morning, I got up and I was making the beds, and I happened to glance out into the backyard. And this wonderful woman whose house we were in had a beautiful Zen garden with a Buddha statue. And it was absolutely fantastic. And I looked out there, and there he was, big as life, white short sleeve dress shirt and tan pants, no hair. It was her husband, the lady's husband. So I believed him after that. And they also had I'm trying to think of the breed of dog, a little white dog that everybody loved who had passed away. And that dog was all over the house. Every time you turned around, you could catch him out of the corner of your eye. He was everywhere. And right now, I'm staying at Broadkill Beach in my cousin's beach house for the off season. And his mother is here. She owned this house. She is here. I haven't seen her, but she likes to knock things over. She likes to smoke upstairs, which she's not supposed to do. So I'll be walking down the hallway and I'll get, cigarette smell, smacks me right in the face. And no one has smoked up here for 23 years. And her cat Henry is also here. I can feel him sometimes on the end of the bed. You can catch him out of the corner. You got big, beautiful Himalayan. And all of that is lovely. I have no problem with any of that. She can keep me company. So I blame my son. He did it to me.
This all tracks. This all tracks.
Yeah.
My experience has been not seeing them straight on, but kind of out of the periphery.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a friend in Houston who had a house that was built in the early 1900s, and I saw somebody in a white pants, a man, walk through an adjoining room, and I described it. And I was like, "Yep, okay." It was the owner from the 20s. I saw him in the backyard
nice.
another time, which was
Very
pretty cool.
nice.
So these kinds of things are fine. And you live in a very haunted place, right? Very historic
Are you
town, very historic area.
Yes. Although, to be fair, there are ghosts everywhere in Delaware.
True.
When I started to write this series, I thought, okay, well, when I get through the good ones in Delaware, then maybe I'll move on to the Maryland part of the Eastern Shore, Salisbury and whatnot. But there are so many that I would like to focus on that it's going to take a long time before I run out. There are a lot. But
Well, you
yeah,
can come up to New Jersey, where I am, a couple of miles from the most haunted road in the state. And when I first moved here, it wasn't completely paved, so late at night was actually fairly terrifying going up it, because after a point, there are no houses, and there are all these legends. We're gonna talk about legends. Black with one headlight out follows you, do not stop, or your car will end up being pushed in the reservoir, and that kind of thing. And I did see something once on that road that, when I described it to someone, she just started shrieking at me and went, "Do you not realize you saw a ghost?" Like, "Oh, yeah, I guess you're right." So they're just, they're just around. There are also specific legends about ghosts that crop up in different places, like the car with the headlight out. But you grew up with, or you're in an area with some very specific legends?
Were you referring to Maggie
Maggie's
or where I'm
Bridge, is
living
that
now?
it?
Yes, yes. I grew up in both Laurel and Seaford, which are separated by about 7 or 8 miles in Sussex County, Delaware. And when I was a teenager in the 80s, and you remember the 80s, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have internet, we didn't have much. And if you were in a very tiny town, there wasn't really all that much to do to amuse yourself. So my friends and everyone had heard of the legend of Maggie's Bridge, where the headless woman is out there looking for her lost child. And what you do is you go out there at midnight and you stand on the corners of the bridge and you basically taunt her and say, Maggie, I have your baby. And she will, if you're lucky, appear to you. Most likely, you can see lights in the woods. You can hear a baby crying. You can sometimes hear hoofbeats of a horse because she was fleeing her home when she was killed. She was very young, very unmarried, and very pregnant. And in the 1800s, that's not really a smart, good way to find yourself. So she was running away with the father of the baby, and as she crossed the bridge, there was a storm that night, and a clap of thunder spooked the horse, and he went over the bridge, and she and the carriage went over the bridge, and she lost her head. So that is how she ended up there. And you go out there and call her. So you can hear things. Your car may not start when you try to leave. I know the last time I went out there, and it was in, well, not the last time, but the time before, in broad daylight, I was taking someone out. I showed them the bridge. And then when we went to leave, the car started, but my friend's phone would hook up to the Bluetooth of the car automatically, which it did. And we went down and turned around and came back over the bridge to go the back way. And when we hit the bridge, the Bluetooth dropped out and the car filled with just blasting, screaming feedback. And he was absolutely terrified. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He's like, okay, I thought that coming in the daytime would be better, but this is not good. Let's go. But yeah,
You
that was
wonder
my
sometimes if there isn't just energy that's built up in a place because of so many people being there with these ideas, or who
yeah.
knows, maybe there's
A
actually.
lot of people go. I know we had the blue moon in August. We did a ghost hunt at Maggie's Bridge, and I had 19 people out there on the bridge, and people had their spirit boxes, and people had the apps on their phone, and they had all their ghost hunting device, and pretty much most of the people that were there got the same few messages: too many, too many, go away. And so I don't think she liked all of us being out there together. I think it might have been too much. We should try maybe a smaller group. But
Well, I
I was
didn't
just
know
hoping
this
she
about
was.
you. What's your background in ghost hunting? Is this something you've done for a while before?
No,
This
not
was a maiden
really. Not.
voyage going out to Maggie's Bridge and
It was.
irritating her?
It was. I did an interview for a podcast back in the spring, and the ladies that I was doing it for were like, there's a blue moon coming, because in my book, the legend is that the full moon is the best time to go and call for her, and the best of the best times is a blue moon. And so the climax of my story does happen on a blue moon on the bridge. But this blue moon, she's like, it's coming up. We should go out there. You should do a thing. And I'm like, look, I'll put it out on my author Facebook page. I'll see if anybody's interested in going. And I got all these people that wanted to go. So I was like, wow, I really have to do it now, don't I? I have to go out there at midnight. And we did, and it was really, really fun. I don't know if I'm going to, you know, do a lot of ghost hunting, because I really love them in theory, but in practice, I am more of a sissy. But I love it. I love it. I would definitely go to all the places that I've written about, but there's some that I don't know. I don't
Well,
know.
let's talk about your books. What
Okay.
got you interested? How did you get started? You have the Haunting Clarity
Haunting
series,
Clarity
and
series.
that's a little joke
Well, my
about the protagonist, right?
yes,
Her
her
name is
name is
Claire.
Claire, and her mother called her Clarity, when she was young. You were my Clarity, so she calls her Clarity. And actually, my son came up with that idea. He's like, you should call it Haunting Clarity, Mom. Her name is Clarity. And I thought, yeah, you're right. You're brilliant. There are 5 books in the series so far. They are a series, but if, say, you only wanted to read about the ghost of the witch in the woods of Millsboro, then you could just pick up that one book and read that one, and you wouldn't miss anything. Each one of them can be standalone, but they do go in order. Claire and her family, grow. She starts in the first book as a 16-year-old at the very beginning, and now she's about 35 in the one that I'm working on right now. So she's come a long way, and she just keeps running into ghosts. It's rough. But the first one, actually, I have it here. The first one, we have Maggie, I Have Your Baby, and that's Maggie's Bridge, and that is in Woodland. And then we have That Devil Knows My Name, and this is about Lums Pond State Park, which is in Bear, Delaware, near Wilmington. And then for the third one, Where the Eidolons Sleep, we actually go back to Woodland because this is about the smallpox outbreak of 1903, where the village of Woodland got smallpox. And you can look in the papers, which cracks me up. You can find this online, where the towns of Seaford and Laurel that surrounded it are saying, oh, yes, we're going to raise money for the people of Woodland and we're going to help them out. And they say it, but they never raised any money. What they did was station armed guards at all the entrances and exits to the town so no one could get in or out. So about 35 people died, only about half of them from smallpox. The other half died from starvation.
Oh
And they
my.
buried them in a mass grave, and no one knows where it is anymore. So Woodland is there are a lot of ghosts in Woodland, a lot. And then we have The Early Fox Gets the Bird. This is about the witch in the woods of Millsboro, whose name has just popped out of my Molly Keyhawk. I forgot her name. And it's basically, oh wait, let me do this last one. Then we have the most recent one, Till Death Do Us Part, which is about the ghost of the abandoned bride that walks up and down the highway outside Cokesbury Church in Georgetown. So they're told in dual timeline. So you get Claire and her family in the present, discovering these ghosts and learning about them and kind of helping them out. But you also get the ghosts themselves before they were a ghost, and the story of their life and what kind of brought them to the end and had forced them into being a ghost. So they kind of go back and forth. Yeah. Okay.
Do you do actual historical research?
I do as much as I can. The ghost stories that appeal to me, like I get asked all the time when I'm going to write something about Patty Cannon and the Patty Cannon house, which is very, very close to Maggie's Bridge, like a mile or so away. But I don't necessarily want to write about, because a lot of this is fiction, like all the stuff in the present, and a lot of it is made up, and I don't want to tell a story that everybody's already heard. I like the ones that are just this close to disappearing forever, and I want to kind of bring them back so that people remember, because even though a lot of this is fiction, the ghosts in these stories were all real people that really lived and had something very tragic happen to them, and I want to remember that. So that's how I got into it. I was actually soaking in the bathtub, and it occurred to me, it was at the very beginning of the pandemic, and I was like, what can I do? What am I going to do? Because I was taking care of my mother, who had Alzheimer's, and I wasn't working, and I was just in the house with her. And I thought, well, shoot, I could go out to Maggie's Bridge, because at the time I lived just a few miles away. I was still living in Seaford. And it made me start thinking, like, who was she actually? We know her name. We know kind of where her grave is. It's a hidden cemetery, but it's somewhere in that area. Who was the father of the baby? Why was she running away? What was happening with her parents? Is she still out there? Does she still feel things? Does she, if she's actually out there in spirit form, haunting the woods, does she know she's dead? Does she remember her life? You know what I mean? And I wanted to answer all of those questions. And so I thought, well, I'll give it a shot. And it was
And
really,
5
really
books
fun.
in
So
a
I keep doing it.
Well, we're gonna stop now for our first and only break. Hang in, everyone. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes. Welcome back to Celestial Compass. I'm talking today to Kelly Lidji, an occult detective author of the Haunting Clarity book series, which is based in historic, actually haunted parts of Delaware in the US. Have any of these actual personalities communicated with you, do you think? Because you've just said before the break that you write about ghosts of people who actually did live.
I feel like when we did the ghost hunt on the bridge, we got a lot of messages that seemed really, really genuine. I felt we got a lot of I personally got messages that she felt scared, that she that it was dark. And the thing that really threw me was there were two other women there that night named Kelly. There were two of them, and three or four different people got the message. There are three of them. There are three of them, and it made me think: is she mad? Is she mad that I brought attention to her? Because it's funny, if you go looking for Maggie's Bridge and no one tells you exactly where to find it, you're not going to be able to find it. Because back when this happened, it was a wooden bridge and the water was wider and deeper and faster. And it was actually looked like a bridge. Now it's just paved road and a couple side rails over like swampy water. It's not, you would never know unless you stopped and looked and saw all of the graffiti that is spray painted on the
Oh.
road there and on the sides. People saying, I hope you find him. Maggie, are you there? And it's funny, the city doesn't cover those up. They'll
Hmm.
leave those. There's also a lot of other stuff, and the city will come over and paint over it, but they leave Maggie stuff there for her. I also feel like the most recent one, the about the ghost of the bride in Georgetown. I used to travel that road a lot, and I saw people. Well, I saw figures walking several times when I was a teenager, and now that I look back on it, I think maybe I saw her. I just wasn't as open to it when I was younger as I am now because I was always absolutely terrified. Um, the other ghost stories, like the Lums Pond State Park, I have not been camping up at Lums Pond State Park. I have been there, but I haven't spent the night. So I haven't been able to really have a good experience. I have not, yeah, not so much the other ones. I usually get messages from family as opposed to the ghosts I write about, but there's always hope. The ghost that I'm writing about now is a gentleman whose name is Lewis Robinson, and he was the apprentice lighthouse keeper at the 14-foot bank lighthouse in the Delaware Bay. And in June of 1911, one of the other lighthouse keepers that was there found him drinking carbolic acid and ending his life. And as soon as he drank it, he was sorry and he regretted it, but it was too late. A few months before, in December, he had fallen down the stairs into the Cassian basement of the lighthouse and broken his ankle and was trapped on the lighthouse for several weeks before he could get back and have it treated. And he went crazy from being stuck there and isolated there and trapped there. So we're going to explore what maybe drove him crazy. And here where I'm staying, I can actually see the lighthouse from the front deck. You got to use binoculars, and it's really, really tiny, but I couldn't get any closer to it unless I was out on the water. So maybe, maybe I'll hear something from him. That would be really cool.
That's very well situated.
Yes,
What's the
it worked out
story that
really
goes with the state park?
well. Oh, okay. That's actually, I have been asked several times which of my books is my favorite. And while Maggie, the first one, is my favorite because she's my girl, she started the whole thing and I love her, but the most fun to write by far was That Devil Knows My Name. It is about, um, I can't remember the actual year, but there two fishermen found a violated and murdered naked corpse floating in the water of Lum's Pond, and they never figured out what happened to her. They never figured out her name. They didn't know who she was, and so my story is about a family that um goes through some desperate circumstances and has to move from Wilmington down to Bear, right near this lake, and you kind of have to spend the whole story trying to figure out which one of these sisters is going to end up as the dead body. And the funny thing is, when I started writing the book, I fully intended to kill one sister, and I ended up killing the other one because I liked her too much. I'm like, I'm gonna let you have the happy ending because I like you. But it was neat because that the house that they end up moving in, you know what? I'm not going to tell you that because I want you to read it. There's some neat stuff. That one was the most fun to write, so I love that one the most.
And so I read the one about the woman who was jilted at the altar
Did you?
connected
Okay.
with Cokesbury,
Mhm.
church. Was there actually a fire?
Uh,
A historic fire?
yes,
There
yes.
was
It
actually a
wasn't at
historic
that exact spot, so I just sort of, embellished ever so slightly and moved it so that I could kind of tie that in with the story that I had going on. But, yeah, it was in that area close enough, but I moved it ever so slightly. So, yeah, yeah.
um, so I had a question and it went, phew, so let's see what I would so the area is actually, I mean, there have been people living, which is the case for pretty much everywhere, but Delaware is like the first state. It's the Constitution state. There's the history goes back incredibly, incredibly far there.
Mhm.
Are you a native? Is this where you grew up?
Yes. I spent the first 12 years of my life in Laurel, and then I spent many more years in Seaford. When my parents got divorced, we moved to Seaford. I was actually born in Seaford Hospital. I did live around Baltimore and Annapolis for about 15 years, but I came back, I guess it's been about 10 years ago, to take care of my mom. And she passed last year, and here I still am. So, but yes, I am lower, slower Delaware girl all the way from way back.
And when you absorbed all of this, it's part of
Yes.
what your lore is being there, and in your books, this is where I was heading, these ghost stories aren't just, "Well, this happened here," but your ghosts have the ability to interact with at least some of the protagonists in your book, or some of the
Mhm.
characters.
They do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I don't know how much I want to give away, but yes, someone in Claire's family does really have the ability to communicate with those who have passed on, and has given a little bit of that to Claire. Oh, that really sounds like something we talked about a little while ago. Because
Really?
life
Yeah, uh-huh. Did you
art
possibly
imitates
have
life,
some
and life imitates art. Um, but yeah, I mean, my ghosts are a little more communicative than the average. Yeah. So
they can manipulate matter. So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Make their presence physically known.
Yes.
I've only run into ghosts that would do things like, uh, turn the electricity off at very important moments, but so far and bang things, but so far I've been spared anyone that can do some of the things that
Some of
happen
the
in your
things.
book. I
Well,
would be happy
I
to
think
never.
that when a ghost or spirit is around someone that has the ability to see and hear and feel them, it made sense to me that they would have more of an ability to do something by being near that person that had that extra sort of power inside them, that sort of energy inside them, that they could feed off of that and do more stuff.
Well, I can testify to that.
Yeah.
I went
Okay.
to Gettysburg once, not because I wanted
Oh,
to, but people I was with wanted to. I really don't like to go to places where there have been really, intense
yeah.
murder, a huge
It's a
battle, not a
lot.
place I
It's a
wanna
lot.
be. And I was with someone who desperately wanted to see ghosts, and we had dinner before we went on a ghost walking tour and then to some ghost storytelling. And at dinner, something was flicking my arm and knocked the salt and pepper shakers off the table. And my companion was shrieking because it wasn't happening to her. She was like, "But I want this." And we found out there was a trickster, like there was an 8-year-old kid who hung out in the dining area. It was an ancient hotel, and he had once run into the street and had been hit by a carriage, so he
Mm.
messed with people in the hotel. But I experienced it and she did not, and I would have happily given it to her. Like, here, you can hear the screaming, shrieking people dying. Um,
Yeah, I haven't been there in a long time. I mean, when you grow up here, you you're there on school trips a lot. That's just one of the places like going to the museums in DC or going to the stuff. I have friends
mhm.
that like moved from Texas and have never been to Washington DC, and I just can't believe that because I get taken there countless times. So I went to Gettysburg, and my mother was an Abraham Lincoln junkie, just absolutely loved him and loved Gettysburg and was kind of an American history buff. So I ended up there a lot. Not so much the ghost aspect of it. She really enjoyed the actual history of it all. And
We have an
yeah.
interesting comment that has come through by somebody who, has ties to, Sussex County, Delaware, saying, "I talked to a couple of those guys who worked in the lighthouse back in the 1970s. It was a job that would really send you crazy." So,
Yeah, I've
I think
learned,
we'll
I mean, in doing my research for this book, I have learned a lot about lighthouses in the Delaware Bay and a lot about lighthouses in general, and what they do over the course of the day and what you need to do to be qualified to work for one. And something I found fascinating was that there are each lighthouse would have a fairly extensive library, and that a
mm.
few times of the year they would trade books with other lighthouses so that everyone would get to enjoy different books. And I work in a bookstore. I just found that so cool. I just can't imagine. I don't know that I could probably handle the isolation to a certain extent because I was one of those people that, when we had the lockdown was like, stay in the house. Okay. And I grew up in the 70s and 80s. I'm a Gen X. I can amuse myself alone for hours. I don't need anything else. I don't need other people. But I feel like if I was out there surrounded by waves all around me, I would be so sick. I
Mm.
would get motion sickness so bad because you're not moving, but everything else around you is moving. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. But it would be, you know, sometimes you see lighthouses come up for sale and you're like, oh, that would be so cool. You could turn it into a house and live there. But it's isolating. It's scary. Yeah, it would be
I
scary to
wouldn't
be out
wanna do it. Um, so is your area really into Halloween? Does it really embrace the spookiness of
there.
the legends or anything?
Not as much as I'd like. We have some ghost hunts around here, and there are a lot of different towns that have really different vibes depending on the town. So some are a lot more into Halloween than others. Like I work in Rehoboth, and Rehoboth is very Halloweeny. We have the Sea Witch Festival coming up this weekend, and it is an absolute madhouse, pandemonium. There's parades, there's costumes. I get to wear a costume to work like 2 or 3 different days. I'm happy about that. But where I grew up, you'd have a little bit, but not so much. And a lot of the people, like when it comes to like my stories, they know the stories because you grow up hearing the stories. Your parents told you the stories, your grandparents told you the stories, but they're not so into like going out and doing them. There are some, but not a lot. Not a lot.
So there aren't really ghost walking tours or anything. A lot of shore
Well,
places do have those.
that's that. No, we do. Is it Chesapeake Ghosts?
Mm.
Is a wonderful organization, and I think it's more of like a Maryland. They have Ocean City. There's a bunch of different ghost walks that you can take. And she's gonna call me, Mindy Burgoyne, the woman that runs it. has put out a bunch of books about Delaware and Maryland ghosts. But when she does one for Lewis, she's going to call me so that I can do that walk for her. There aren't that many in Delaware. Most of them are kind of in the Maryland. But there are. You just have to look for them. It's not real fun like Salem or anything like that, where it's just everything.
Mhm.
But you can find it if you look hard enough.
There's an outfit in, New York City who does it year round.
Oh,
They just have kind of macabre walking tours of real things that happened. I've been on a whole bunch of them. Those are great. They all dress like, you could tell who they are when you there's no question.
oh,
When
cool.
you run into which reminds me, how do you like to dress up? Like, what will you wear do you know yet what you're gonna wear at
Well,
work?
last year for Sea Witch Festival, I dressed up as Maggie from the first book. I had, the kind of old fashioned clothes, and I had like blood all around me, and and I was pregnant. I had like the belly and the whole thing. This year, I found a Sarah Sanderson costume at the thrift store for really cheap, so I got myself a lovely blonde wig, and that's what we're gonna do. But I've go all out every chance I can. And the funny thing is I get most of my clothing from Spirit Halloween, and I don't mean costumes, I mean like the other clothes that they have. So I dress some kind of spooky pretty much all the time. So even today I'm wearing bats. So, I any chance to dress up. I grew up in the theater, so any chance to put on a costume, I'm going to do it.
Mhm.
Yeah, going to do it. So I
Understood.
look forward to it. Yep.
I ran into somebody at a Witches Night festival this weekend who buys her clothing at Spirit Halloween, so apparently that's what you do. Okay, I guess I should go into
They
them.
have a good selection of like horror themed regular clothing, like regular shirts and regular, like from now that it's getting cooler until after Christmas, I will be wearing my Freddy Krueger sweater that I got from there, which is a beautiful, high quality sweater in red and green stripes. So it's appropriate for Christmas. You know what I
With
mean?
a mass murderer on it.
I've got my Smithfield Sanitarium Michael Myers shirt that I wear to work. I've got, my I have a lot of Jason. I have a Jason hoodie. So any chance to wear spooky stuff. But I at Browseabout, I am the store's resident spooky book person. So like if you want your horror recommendations, you come to me. So you gotta look the part, I'm in my lane. So I gotta work the lane.
Well, what sorts of books do you yourself like in this genre that you might
Oh my
recommend to
heavens.
people?
Well, I am a Stephen King junkie. I grew up with, my mother's shelf filled with Stephen King and trashy romance. It's an interesting mix. But I've read through all of those. Let's see, what have I read that's good lately? Richard Shizmar's books are really good. He wrote Chasing the Boogeyman, which is actually it's like meta true crime fiction. So it's this amazing thing. And it takes place in Edgewood, Maryland. And it just has a sequel. He's actually going to be at the Sea Witch Festival on Saturday signing his new book, Memorials, which I read the arc of a couple months ago and I loved it. So I'll be excited to see him again. I like Zoji Stage, who wrote Baby Teeth, which was amazing, and the sequel, Dear Hannah, and also Mothered. I love that. I have different recommendations for any kind of like, do you want gentle spooky? Do you want body horror? Do you want really, really disturbing? There's all sorts of really good stuff. Like I like to recommend Audition to people, which is by a Japanese writer whose name I cannot remember. And it reads three-quarters like a romance, like a comedy romance. And then it goes off the rails so far that you're just sitting staring at the book you read. So, I like all the spooky,
All the
all
spooky
the
stuff.
spooky, all the spooky.
Okay. Um, are there movies? Do you also this is venture into movies?
All the movies. Yeah, yeah. If it's a horror movie, I like it. I got excited because there's a found footage movie that I absolutely loved called Creep, which has a sequel, Creep 2, and I just found out that there's going to be a limited series on Shudder, the Creep tapes or something. So I'm excited about that. I think the last movie I saw in the theater was Longlegs. You know, gotta I
So
wanna go
you
back to
follow
see.
Shudder. Okay, I have a friend who's in a lot of films on Shudder.
Oh, yeah.
So
It's a really good one. It's a really good one. Although, you don't always have to pay. The There's a streaming service called Tubi that's free, and they have probably the best selection of horror movies anywhere. So, and it's October, so I'm going through the well, actually, I do it in September too. Once it's September 1st, I will only read and watch horror things for the entire 2 months. It's just straight up. Not that I ever don't, but I avoid anything else during those months. So just a couple of days ago, I had a day off, and I tried to make it through all the Halloweens. I got up to number 6, and the day was over. And right now, I'm almost finished, and then we're gonna do all the Nightmare on Elm Streets, and then we're gonna do. I usually save the Friday the 13th for the actual Friday, like an actual Friday the 13th, and then I'll watch all of those and go
first
through
time
all.
I saw that, it was a Friday the 13th.
Nice.
Yeah, double
They did
feature
this.
with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I throw in because I lived in Austin. I went to law
Mhm.
school in Austin, and someone in my class rented the house. Rented the house, and he
Really?
had dinner parties there, and you would see meat hooks,
Oh,
above in
that's
the floor
amazing. I'm
ceiling,
so jealous.
and now it's been moved, it's a restaurant, which I find even more macabre, but
All right, I heard that.
there was a time when people lived in it.
You know the house from Silence of the Lambs, Buffalo Bill's house, the one she goes to at the end of the movie and finds him in there, was bought and turned into an Airbnb. And so you can literally rent that house, and they've got it all fixed up just like the movie. They've got mannequins in the basement. There's a pit in the basement that you can get into, and it's in Pennsylvania. So I was like, I can totally do that. I've got to get up there, but that would be super awesome.
I
And I want
leave
to get
that
to
one to you.
DC.
I leave that to you. So, tell people where they can find you and what your books are.
My books are available on Amazon. Is quite an easy way for people if they are not local. They're also in 3 or 4 different bookstores down here. You can also get them from my website, which is kellylidji.com. They are available on Kindle Unlimited. If you happen to have that, you can read them for free. There are audio versions available as well on Amazon. But yeah, one or the other. Like they're at Browseabout in Rehoboth. They're at Bethany Beach Books in Bethany. They're at Capriccio's in Ocean View. There's I can't remember the name of the store. There's a place in Laurel that they're available. So
And
you'll
spell
find them.
spell the name of your website for people.
KELLYLIDJI.com. Yeah. I know it's a tricky name.
I just wanted to make sure people got
Yep.
it.
I appreciate that.
All right, everybody, we're moving into, I mean, this is going to feel very, very much like Halloween on steroids this time. As I
Oh
said in
God.
my forecast, and you can get lots more information about this in my forecast for October and soon November at omtimes.com. And these are double, they're also at my site, empowermentunlimited.net, and on my YouTube channel, which is Professional Aquarian. We're going through something that we have not gone through before, and we will not go through again. So there's an intensity to it. It's like we're walking through a doorway and carving a lot of stuff out. I know a number of people who are dealing with ancestral issues in a huge way. I have quite unexpectedly been doing genealogy. Okay, that's something I never did before, and it sort of fell into the current time present. So, lighten your load, focus, figure out what you want. We're all going through a very unusual doorway, and you want to be sure to deal with stuff because it's like you can't take it all through with you. So, deal with it now. You might want to move to audiobooks. That's not bad. Electronic books, physical objects are going to be less and less appealing, but those of us who write books, of course, want you to buy our books. So again, KELLYLIDJI, the Haunting Clarity series. They're extremely well written, really interesting interweaving of ghost stories and something happening in modern times and how they end up interrelating, how they interact, and they go back and forth and back and forth. It's very, very artfully done, and they're loads of fun. It's a and they're it's not they're not superficial. They're a good read, an easy read. Well, a fast read, I guess is a good way to put it. But they're not like you can't just skip through it because everything's a plot point, basically. So I thank you very, very much. And everybody, thanks for being here. Everyone dress up, go have a good spooky season. And I thank you all. Bye.